this is Ricki Spencer and welcome to another episode of Quests by Community. Today we're going to deep dive and explore everything about art and specifically art therapy. What does an art therapist do? And specifically for us, what does a queer art therapist look like, sound like, and take us through the journey? So today we're very fortunate to have Trent Mac with us. Trent, tell us a little bit about what is art therapy?
First thing that stems to mind, it's a form of psychotherapy. So similar to, say, psychology or counselling, it's a form of talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the key benefits or the things that stands out most is that we have the ability as an art therapist, I have an ability to incorporate art making when working with a client and to help them sort of explore themselves from an emotional perspective, explore lived experience, instead of sitting there and just talking one-to-one the whole time. We have that opportunity to explore and get creative and move from the brain mind into the heart mind.
I love that moving into the mind. And now let's go into your mind, Trent, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Trent.
I've been an art therapist for about five or 6 years. So I studied a master's in therapeutic arts practice. It's a bit of a mouthful. And it was a 3-year master's. I sort of got into even knowing about art therapy through a friend who was studying a different course. And before she mentioned that she was studying it, I had no idea that art therapy even existed. So then went into the course. I got some time doing some volunteer work with within SRSs, so supported residential services.
Getting into the space of art therapy, did you have to be able to be an acclaimed artist to do this type of therapy?
No, definitely not. So I do paint as a hobby. So I'm an abstract painter. I throw paint at a canvas, which is probably the only way I could paint because creating art I love, but do I have any technical skills? Absolutely not. I make a bit of a joke with my clients when I first start with them and I point out the fact I can only really draw stick figures at best. I've drawn cats that look like lions, lions that look like elephants, elephants that look like dogs. But you know, the whole beauty, one of the beauties of art therapy is it's not about the aesthetic of art making. It's about the meaning making that we can get from things that we create. So certainly not, I have artistic abilities, but certainly not much talent.
And speaking of talent, this is something that a lot of people listening might be thinking. They hear about it. Oh, I'd love to be able to do art therapy or try myself doing it. In terms of the person coming to seek art as a way of healing, do you have to be able to have skills to draw to commence art therapy?
No, definitely not. So I work with clients using a whole range of modalities. So I have a young client that I work with and we use Lego as part of the process. Abstract art making. So where I studied, we were really taught about the experiential side of art making. So they had this massive room out the back of the college that was like a treasure trove of materials. Everything from sandboxes to little figurines to magazines. Yeah, it was really so much fun to be able to go in and explore. One of the things with art therapy, it's about exploration, creativity. So I always say to people, if you can use it to make something, then that has the potential of being art and has the potential of allowing us to work therapeutically.
What does it mean to be a queer art therapist for you?
I find that my queerness allows, on one side of things, to work creatively. It sort of inspires that desire to work creatively, but I also have a huge interest in working with younger clients in those formative years, not by any means of trying to seek clients that identify with the queer community. I have probably about 8 to 10 clients who do. And I think it really helps them when they come see me. I know that I speak to their support networks before, and my support network knows about my queer identity, which is sometimes why they present clients to me. And I'm always conscious and curious about being a male therapist. And maybe this is just my own thinking, but how that might inform some clients' views when they haven't met me yet. But when they meet me and they see that my nails are painted, and they see that I'm just a very friendly queer guy, I think that helps really sort of alleviate some of the stress or pressure that they may feel seeking out therapeutic support.
One of the areas that I'm passionate about, and I know we spoke to before, is that young people sort of in the process of affirming their gender identity. Is that something that parents who want to support their young children to in a safe space, that they could use this as a form of healing and helping their child to kind of come to terms with who they are?
It can be really interesting with art therapy in regards to some of the work we try and do is at times remove labels that we have. And labels don't have to be actual categorical labels. It's the terminology and the words that we use I consider to be labels. And by removing those and the need to, initially find the words, but to sit with the experiencing, to sit with the felt response, can work well with younger and older LGBTQI plus people, the queer community, because it really leans into what is the felt response to my experiencing? How do I feel? What do I feel? And so in those times where young people are really trying to form their identity, I feel like it can be almost a bit of relief to take off the labels, take off the need to have labels, and instead sit with what that experience means to them.
As you were speaking, the thought came to my head was that I could see a place for people like yourself going into aged care settings and working with our older queer community in safe spaces and exploring their sense of place and space and self, doing art therapy as a way. Is that something that a queer art therapist like yourself would do or could do?
Maybe it's formed by my queer identity. Maybe it's just me as an art therapist, but I always have a little wireless speaker that I take. So basically every session I think I've ever done has been with music, and I let the clients play the music. And I think perhaps going into aged care, working with an older queer clientele, there's a lot to be said about the influence of music in setting up that therapeutic space. And also going into whether it's an aged care or other facility where you're going into the person's space. Obviously, as long as you're welcome and you're invited, it can be really beneficial to encourage that person or allow that person to be seen who they are as they are. So going into aged care and perhaps working with an older queer client who may have earlier on had issues or uncertainties about their identity. I think I provide that sort of space that allows for that playfulness and that openness to sitting with their queer identity.
I just love when you mention the word playfulness, because that's something we associate with youth or child, or even prior to youth, infancy. And I think that's beautiful to really disrupt that notion that playfulness can happen even when you're 95 or 100. And I love that.
Values, or the things I work with, is playfulness, it's curiosity, it's having an open-mindedness. And it's wonderful to work with clients where you alleviate that sort of need to get things right or to, be artistic. It's so wonderful working with clients where, sometimes they feel like they get something wrong, or they're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or oh, that's not what I thought it would be. and then sitting with them and figuring out what that looks like can just open up a whole new pathway of understanding for them. So yeah, having that sense of not being objective or objectives based, but being subjective and being playful as you work through the inquiry process.
I want to sort of now explore a little bit about something which is trauma-informed practice, and how does that sort of embed into your own practice as an art therapist?
Through my art therapy studies, we certainly had some parts around trauma-informed care, but I certainly am mindful that we weren't trauma-informed practitioners by the end of it, and I'm so conscious to the duty of care that I have as a therapist, in this case an art therapist, to hold a client's needs not just within the space and the session, but afterwards. I've worked with clients who have who've had complex mental health and intellectual disability, who've lived in government-funded housing, who have had traumatic lived experience. And so I use my knowledge of either what their lived experience is or the fact that they might identify as having trauma-informed lived experience to really tailor how I work with them. So at the end of the session or throughout the session, being really mindful, okay, I might be seeing this client once a fortnight, some clients once a month, and even with my weekly clients, there is so much time and space in between. It's really about, you know, as an art therapist, nurturing and companioning the client through their inquiry process and really being able to assist them if you sort of get a sense that they're really sort of tipping into some trauma that, whether it's as an art therapist or me as a person, might not be qualified in working with. So I currently have a client. I've been given a debrief about the trauma that they've had. They're probably the client that has the most trauma that I've worked with. But I work with the client. You know, art therapy is about being person-centered. I keep mindful of the traumas that I've been told about. I really work, when I get presented with a client who has trauma, work with their support network to get a really clear understanding of what the experience is, what the triggers are, being as best equipped as I can before I start working with them, and then keeping in contact with the support network. You know, if there are times that I'm concerned or worried about perhaps something that's happened in session, or if they're presented with thoughts or conversation that might talk to things like suicide or self-harm, it's really about feeling comfortable. If I don't feel that the client has left without having been triggered, then I'm going to do what I need to try and best keep them as well and healthy in between time seeing them.
And you mentioned before that to me that you can do art therapy individually as a one-to-one and also in groups. So is there a difference between doing art therapy in a group setting and a one-on-one?
There is. So for me, working with a client individually, or if I work with a lot of NDIS clients, and they may ask to either join a group or to work one-to-one. And the biggest difference for me is by having that one-to-one time, you're able to focus purely on the client. There's more opportunity to inquire into their lived experience and really sit with what's happening for them or what they want to inquire into. Within a group, there is, again, that duty of care just to, you know, some of my groups are up to 9, 10 people within that certain period of time. And so you just don't have what I would call the luxury of that individual focus. We can still work on similar sort of inquiry processes, but you know, it's just having your time divided by X amount of people and being realistic that you might not go as deep into the inquiry. And I think the other thing, especially again with the NDIS clients, is that real sense of community. The groups that I run at the moment, none of the clients have known each other before coming to this group. We've sort of created the group with that sort of community mindset. And it's really great to see how some of the groups, they now meet socially outside just the therapeutic support. Some have WhatsApp groups set up. So yeah, it's really about those that community mindset for the group.
And so if there had people listening at the moment who thought, oh, I really would love to try or get involved to explore art therapy to help me process who I am or deal with some of my past issues and trauma, you have a website that people can get in contact with you?
I do, yes. So I've got a website which basically explains who I am. It has my professional values on there, so what I sort of stand by in terms of working with clients, and a bit about the services and supports that I provide.
And the other thing I was going to ask you is that, say if some people are at home and thinking, oh, well, how do I begin what art therapy could be like, and that, are there any suggestions you want to give to our audience how they could start at home before they make contact with you, what you would try?
For me, there's art therapy, there's art as therapy, and then there's art as mindfulness. And so the big difference, art therapy for me, is using art as a therapeutic support, inquiring into lived experience. Art as therapy is possibly what I do with some of my groups, because you're using artistic and creative modalities within a therapeutic setting, but you're perhaps not using it to inquire into the lived experience and things on someone's mind. Then you just have art as mindfulness. And again, I do some of this with clients where I would encourage people to try. It could be as simple as looking on social media or online. One amazing activity that I've stumbled across only recently is called neurographic art.
Oh.
And typing it into YouTube or typing it into the interwebs, you'll see some really great demonstrative, some examples of videos of how to do the art, and you'll get it. It gives you a sense of the mindfulness benefits and therefore the therapeutic benefits of doing art as therapy.
I wanted to now thank you for this beautiful stress relief that you made for me. I want to showcase everyone. Tell us a little bit about this and the importance of developing these sorts of creative stress releases.
So I've called this the anxiety band, and that's just the name I sort of came up with. I really pride myself when working with clients to not sort of be presenting the same materials, the same activities each time. Like some of the clients that I work with on a weekly basis, I've been seeing for over a year. And, there are some activities we might replicate or redo, but I certainly try and come up with new and creative ways to incorporate art, to look at things like anxiety or depression or mental illness. And so this is one I stumbled across quite literally being in a $2 shop and just looking at all the different materials. So I'm like a bit of a kid in a candy store when it comes to going to a shop and seeing all the arts and crafts and thinking about what I can make with it. So these are just sort of rubber bands, and they always come in packs of maybe say 50, and you get bright colors and get neon colors. And I was just playing with it and created this sort of braided band. And I was sitting there just sort of, I can't even remember, I think I was maybe in a Zoom meeting myself or on some sort of video call, and I was feeling a bit anxious myself. And I know that for me, sometimes when I get anxious, it's about having a way of distracting myself and my mind a little bit. And so I grabbed for one of these that I'd made, and I just found by rubbing my fingers along it, because it's got a really coarse texture, brought my mind into the sort of the here and now, into using the band. And then since then, I've also learned that because it is that sort of rubber, you can pull on it, pretty hard. So there's been times where I've been stressed or again anxious, and having that movement of stretching the band, kind of putting a bit of pressure on there, I found really beneficial. So I sort of introduced that to a couple of my clients who I know have anxiety, and they've sort of given me the great feedback that they found it really useful for when they are feeling a bit dysregulated. So I sort of came up with that, and I just thought, and it's colourful. It's again that playful, and the actual making of them is quite therapeutic, because in effect you're sitting there sort of braiding the three pieces of rope, and you can do it whilst chatting, and you just sort of simply braiding. So that I know from my experience, but from what clients have told me, they find it therapeutic just to sit there and braid, and we chat, and then they have something to take away with them and use in their day-to-day life.
And that's what I love about your approach to art therapy, is giving people some sorts of tools that can help self-regulate their inner being. And I know that you're really passionate about working in the community, and you're set up a support group of therapists. Can you tell us a little bit about that space?
I've recently, so towards the end of last year, taken on a role as the network coordinator for the Melbourne LGBTQI+ Mental Health Professionals Network. So a bit of a mouthful there, but I'm so interested in all aspects of mental health, art therapy and beyond. What my role is to facilitate and to actually come up with, I think it's up to 4 network meetings a year. And so this network is made up of mental health professionals who have a focus on the community. So it can be from social workers and psychologists. I know we have like at-home withdrawal nurses. It's basically anyone who works with a member of the community in that mental health sector. And the idea is to bring information, guest speakers, and bring the network together to share knowledge, encourage understanding of working with clients in that community. The network's been around for, I think, about 4 years, but it sort of took a bit of a hiatus over the lockdown period. So we're sort of now, with me back on board, we're rejigging it, and we have our first network meeting coming up, which we have a wonderful guest speaker coming along to share either professional and or personal lived experience or knowledge. And it's really just about informing the people who work within that mental health space.
If there are people who are listening who are part of our community and are really wanting to engage and network, how can they get in touch with that space?
So it's called the Mental Health Professionals Network, and it's across Australia, and they have, I don't know the exact figure, but hundreds of networks based off of different, I guess, interests and knowledge. So with this particular one, it's as simple as going to their website, which goes by that name, and you can type in the search function. So for our one, it's the Melbourne LGBTQI+. And I guess for anyone who works, again, with that sort of client demographic. And I know with my position as the network coordinator, I am so open and inviting to people who may sit on the fringe, who might not be a psychologist or might not be a social worker, but may have clients that they might want to sort of work with and better understand.
People who are interested, especially those from our community who are putting in their NDIS applications, and maybe that's something that some people do know, that if you can put in as art therapy as a way of healing and support.
From my understanding of sort of like the support coordination side of joining or being accepted into the NDIS, sort of being approved, there is those conversations that clients and their network, so their family and their primary caregivers can, they have those conversations with a support coordinator and discuss what the needs are. And I certainly have clients who've started their plan specifying that they want art therapy, but there are certainly my professional network who know what art therapy is, know the benefits, and may suggest it to a client. And it's about having that discussion about what the client's needs are. I'm a big advocate for like a holistic approach to seeking out therapy. I think, you know, art therapy sits in so well with other types of support. So if a client already sees a psychologist, doesn't mean they can't see an art therapist. And I would usually work, again, with the support coordinator or the client's team to find out what other supports they're getting. You know, I know with the NDIS you can't see 2 art therapists at the same time, as an example. So being mindful that seeking out different types of supports is okay, but it needs to really complement existing supports or supports that a client is trying to find.
And I noticed too, you're mentioning that with some of your clients, you also can see them in the school setting too. So that's something for parents who have young children who may be affirming their gender or sexuality at a very early age. This is something you could work with them in a school safe space.
So I've worked and I'm working with clients and doing school visits or home visits. And I've worked with clients individually and in groups that are questioning or have already identified as non-binary or perhaps gender fluid. And again, sort of it creates that space for them, especially in those sort of group where they're able to find like-minded or I guess socially and culturally minded young people who share the same sort of values and have the same curiosities or identification.
And Trent, what does your next 12 months look like for you?
Well, that's a good question. I usually don't know what my next 12 hours looks like, but I am in the process of going full-time as an art therapist. So I've been working part-time for about 4 or 5 years, and I'm making that big, scary jump into full-time. So that's going to be, very interesting. I think a friend of mine describes it as scary good, which is what he said, scary good. It's going to be a great thing, but a little bit of nerves, you know, running my own business. And then with the Mental Health Professionals Network, I'm so keen to really take that to new places, not just to build, you know, that knowledge base and sharing information, but the potential of building social networks. Again, it's that like-minded. You know, I'm a big advocate for finding your soul tribe, and sometimes that can be led by things like the work that you do and the interests that you have. I've also started a monthly segment on Joy's radio, breakfast radio.
So tell us about that.
Look, I've only done the first segment, so it's brand new. But once a month, the first Wednesday of each month, sitting in with the wonderful breakfast team and just sharing information, sharing knowledge around therapies, around mental health, self-development, self-awareness, all those wonderful topics. So coming in and having a chat like this. And then if that wasn't enough, I'm currently studying child and adolescent mental health to further my knowledge and, you know, the clients that I can work with. Got a couple of podcasts that I'm expressed interest in. So never a dull moment, that's for sure. Getting involved in both the mental health community, but also the queer community as well. My interest in mental health and art therapy and working with young people, hence doing the study, just feels so right. And I think there's such a need to nurture young people's minds as they grow up and formulate their views of the world. So that's going to be my big focus for this year.
Trent, it's been an absolute honor and privilege listening to you, and the passion and love you have for our community, it really shines through. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on Quest by Community. And for those people out there wanting to connect with Trent, all the details will be provided on our links. Thank you so much.